Hello, fellow human! Welcome back to another Dank Doggo // Malicious Compliance. We have 5 stories in total for you guys today. The first story is posted by // Wibbly Gobbly, with the title of "A bar near me found a hilarious loophole to get around noise complaints and keep hosting live music." A bar in my town used to host live bands all the time until one of the neighbors complained about the noise. It turns out the zoning rules didn't allow them to have live music and they almost got shut down. The bar owner read over said zoning rules and noticed that the wording forbade them to have live music indoors, but they could have it outdoors. So they moved the stage to the patio station where it would be even louder for the neighbors and still be legal. They still have live music sometimes, but not nearly as often as they used to. They didn't want to push their luck, I guess. Dang, that's some awesome loophole that they exploited! On to the second story, written by / Kimchi Katie. You have been randomly selected. This happened about 3 years ago while I was going through an airport in the US. I walked through the metal detector, something must have beeped, and they needed to pat me down. After a thorough pat down, I put my shoes on and start to walk over to grab my bag. A TSA agent stops me and says, "You have been randomly selected. Please step into the body scanner." I was polite but said I really didn't want to get into the body scanner and asked if there was another way. The agent said that I could get a pat down. I said, well, I just got a pat down, so they angrily told me to pick an option. So I took 2 steps backwards and the woman who pat me down 30 seconds ago and spread them again. While she was patting me down, I asked her if she found anything new. She stared daggers at me but let me go. Well, if that's the case, then I've been randomly selected every time I've flown. So yeah, I don't know if it's bad luck or it's BS. On to the third story, shared by / NY Gibbs. Tenant asking landlord, me, to be more professional. I'm a small-time landlord with just 4 tenants. Earlier this year, I had 2 sisters that didn't respond to my request to add the gal's husband to the lease, though he was living with them. Not a big deal, but I did mention the pit bull they also brought home without permission. I do allow pets and had previously approved their other dog. I asked nicely in person and by email in the months leading up to the malicious compliance. They also did not respond when I asked if they were happy there and wanted to renew their lease for the following year. I asked again. Then I emailed them notice that I would start showing the unit 2 days later. I tried to be a nice landlord, I do. They had a newborn as well, so I scheduled all the showings within a 2-hour window on the same night so I could be in their space as little as possible. Also because they had not responded and it was now a serious crunch time for getting another tenant and my spouse worked all the following 2 weeks during the evening showing hours, I had delightful inconvenience of bringing my 2 and 6 years old children with me to the showings. Because I'm not a corporation, I'm a small-time family landlord with kids. Try to imagine how difficult it is to conduct business meeting with 2 kids, right? Then imagine the staggering showings every 15 minutes with prospective tenants who are also bringing their own kids. Just to further clutter your imagination, this is an 800 square foot 2-bedroom apartment with a cozy entryway. So I arrived by 2 kids to find my tenant still at home along with the husband, the newborn, and the other sister's boyfriend. So that's 7 people in a small kitchen already. Then the first prospective tenants start arriving. Husbands, wives, and kids, and showing up early, so there's 2 sets of them. That's 14 people in a small kitchen. And I'm a mom. I have magical powers. So I'm holding my toddler, my daughter is safely under the dining table coloring, and I'm chatting with the prospective tenants and directing traffic while my actual tenants prepare to depart. If you didn't know this already, it is a common practice in the US to leave the premises during real estate or apartment showings. This was their first apartment, so I actually emailed them ahead of time to let them know what is generally expected at showings. In other words, a relatively tidy apartment and that they can leave for their own convenience. They do actually leave after the boyfriend tells a prospective tenant that he, in fact, also lives there. And I carry on with exhausting scheduling of showings and have my new tenants all picked out and the lease signed by the next day. Awesome, right? The next night, I get a voicemail from husband, who is not my tenant. I saved it and just listened to it again because it still gave me the same delightful shiver of malicious compliance. In his voicemail, he told me how awful it was that my children touch his infant's things. They didn't, by the way, because I keep my kids entertained with my magical mommy toys, but prospective tenants also brought children. And how they had to sterilize everything to keep their infant from being sick, and how inconvenient it was to have showings with only 2 days notice, and how very unprofessional I was to bring my children, and if I could just be more professional in the future. You can hear it, can't you? The deep shiver of malicious compliance vibrating through my offered being. The next morning, I start issuing professional lease violation notice. One for the extra residents of the unit, hubby and boyfriend, one for the extra dog, and a few additional ones for building concerns I noted during the showings. They ignored the violation notice, which I sent by certified mail and thoughtfully also by email. I decided to be even more professional 30 days later and issue a 5-day notice to vacate. And I called their mom, who is their emergency contact, as an eviction notice is an emergency. Did I mention that their lease was due to end just a few weeks later? But it would be unprofessional of me to let these violations slide until then. 3 days later, they'd magically sent me all the information I'd requested, removed the other dog, licensed the first dog, gotten the required pet insurance. They moved out their lease termination date and skipped out their last electricity bill and left the unit in damaged condition. Despite my professional security deposit, disposition statement, and request for payment, they ignored those notices until I stated I would proceed to small claims court by X date for the total due beyond their security deposit. On X date, they replied stating that they didn't think it was fair, that they should have to cover damages to the unit or pay any more money toward their utility bill. Yep. 2 months later, they were in the lobby of the courthouse sitting across from each other on uncomfortable waiting room benches. They were laughing among themselves about how they're going to get their full security deposit back. And I'm quietly reviewing my presentation notes to the judges and my seizable stack of evidence, photographs, videos. This was my first time in court, but I wasn't laughing. Oh no, I was preparing. 1 hour later, we're back in the lobby, and their mom is trying to write me a check for the full amount of the judgment. She doesn't have a pen, her kids don't have a pen. I, however, have a pen. I cheerfully offer my pen. She writes the check and hands it to me, and wait. I hold out my hand again. Got my pen back too. I was so proud of myself for not saying any sassy things in my head at the moment. You know why? Because I was being professional, as I'd been from the moment he'd left that voicemail. As a last note, I do acknowledge that it would have been better if I didn't brought my children. However, if you have kids, you'll understand that sometimes they simply have to go where you go. Well, it's interesting if you consider all these small things you normally let slide really add up if you decide to go by the book. On to the fourth story. Neighbor tells Grams he should mind his own damn business. That advice cost neighbor most of his yards and a car. Graham had just moved into a retirement park with a lot that backed up to the county land that was a nature preserve. His backyard was basically non-existent, but he didn't mind as he got to look out over the preserve. However, he did marvel at how his next door neighbor's backyard extended a good 8 feet past his, giving neighbors a nice space back there. Graham tried to be friendly with all his neighbors, exchanging phone numbers and the like, and one day, he noticed that the next neighbor was putting down expensive pavers that extended from his back door all the way to the old fence post that designated the preserve boundary. Graham watched the neighbor yank the 3 rickety fence posts out of the ground and move them back an extra 2 feet into the preserve before pounding them back in, then start to clear the land, intending to gain himself more area for his pavers. Grams used to work for the National Park Services as a young lad, so he thought he had better warn his neighbor of the consequences of his actions, so he heads out back for a little chat. Neighbor is immediately defensive, and before Grams says much, neighbor tells him, "You're new here. I've been here 10 years, and mind your own darn business." Graham decides not to press the issue. Nothing happens that year, but the following year, when most of the park emptied out to head north for the summer, the county comes by to check on the preserve. Graham noticed them going back and forth behind neighbor's house. The workers are pulling out maps and taking photos and making phone calls, and soon more guys shows up. Turns out neighbors has moved the post several times over the years, and in reality his backyard is supposed to be even smaller than Graham's backyard. To make it worse, neighbor put pavers in the back, specifically to park both his golf cart and a cherry red sports car back there for summer, so the county will have to move them before they can do anything else. They tip a notice to the front door and leave. Grams goes over to read it and states it that neighbor was in violation encroaching onto the protected lands, and he has 30 days to move his car, tear up the pavers, and pay a fine up to $11,000 because of the damage of endangered species who inhabited the protected lands, as well as trespassing fees. Failure to do so within 30 days will result in golf cart and car being towed, impounded pavers will be dug up and carted off neighbors' expenses, and the fine will be increased for every additional day past the deadline. 30 days comes and goes, so a week after that, Grams has quite a show as the first car and cart were towed, pavers were dug up and hauled off, the old fence posts and ropes were replaced with a metal post embedded into burnt cement bases connected by steel cables. The whole process took several weeks to finish, but the preserve looked a bit more legit when they were done. A few solar cameras were installed so the county could monitor the wildlife and encroachers remotely. Meanwhile, more notices were taped into the front door of neighbor's house. By November, the snowbirds were flooding back into the park, including the neighbor. That was Graham's second show of the summer, as neighbor reads all the notice, digging down until he reads the first one, then runs out back and starts screaming and cussing of a storm before running back to his car to dig out his cell phone so he can call the county to find out where his car and golf cart were. Graham stays indoor to avoid the guy, as he is frantically trying to unload his car to turn on his water and electricity and get the AC and toilets going, and all while trying to someone at the county to pick up the phone and give him some answers. He finally gets live persons and proceeds to scream at them while on the speakerphone about his car and cart. So the call keeps getting kicked to other people because who wants to help a screamer? Basically, the neighbor is told to come to the county office to get this straightened out. 3 days later, neighbor catches Grams outside and asks if he was here when the county stole his car and destroyed his backyard. Grams said he was, and the neighbor says, "Well, why didn't you call me when you saw them putting notice on my door? You had my number up north." Grams said he had thought about doing that, but figured neighbor would prefer him to mind his own darn business, so he decided to go against it. Grandpa played the long con. I like it. Waited 2 years to shine. And assuming that Grams isn't only neighbor, I would say that this guy isn't the most popular on the block. On to the final story, shared by wSlash I will be playing this in front of the whole class. Lol, okay? I was talking to some of my friends from undergrad, and this story from my freshman year came up again. Second semester of my freshman year, I was taking a music theory course. The professor was very serious about her job, and this class was a bit of weed out class for students who wanted to pursue music education. I was taking it for fun. By the time the end of the semester rolled around, I got the feeling she didn't really like me much because I didn't pay attention in class, but I still got A's on homework, exams, playing the test. I'd played piano for a decade by this point, so she couldn't really punish me for anything since I wasn't disrupting the class, but was a thorn in her side through the lack of participation. Thank God that wasn't part of our grade. Our final project was to find a poem we liked and craft a song using the poem as the lyrics. As she passed out the requirement sheet, she announced that she would be playing these for the class, so we need to put an effort so that we don't feel embarrassed by what she was playing in front of everyone, about 30 people. She shoots a glance at me, the least involved students, as she says that, which I took as a challenge. I found a poem called A Minor Bird and decided to craft my masterpiece in the key E flat minor. The reasoning, 6 of the 7 notes are lowered a half a step. So it's not a matter of thinking everything I see is lowered, it's everything but one note is lowered, which is fairly hard to keep track of. While sight reading something that utilizes both hands on the piano. We were to hand them in the beginning of the class, and she would go through the stack and play them without practicing it first. It's a freshman level class, how hard could it be? I spent weeks working on this because I wanted to make sure it was both well written and an absolute bomb to play. I had upperclassmen take a look at it to make sure everything was labeled correctly, and they told me I was the most magnificent bastard ever because this professor had irked most of the students in the department who had taken her class. Then the day comes. We all turn out papers and I'm visibly excited by everything. The professor comes in and goes full Dolores Umbridge. I certainly hope everyone met their requirements and put care into their work. If not, we'll soon find out. goes to the piano and pulls the first paper off the stack and makes some comments about it that aren't negative but are goading regarding the amount of effort it seemed to take to write it. She apparently pulls mine up about 2/3 of the way, sits down to play it, and stops the first chord. She looks around, makes eye contact with me, and straight up glares before regaining her composure and plunking through my piece. There are several chords that make a nice crunch before she corrects herself. That darn not flat note trip her up every time, and it sounds like whoever wrote this piece did a crappy job because of how it sounded. At the end, the meek international student who has perfect pitch raises her hand and goes, "Excuse me, Dr. Music Instructor, that piece you just played, it has 6 flats in the key, yes?" Professor, "Yes it did. I didn't quite expect that." Students, "You didn't play all the 6 flats, it didn't sound." Professor turns, glares at me and goes, No, I did not." Got a 97% because she marked a chord label incorrect. Went back in and showed her that she missed the non-flat note in the chord and that it was actually labeled correctly, got it changed to a 100%. TLDR, music professor threatened to play our pieces in front of us so we could work harder on it. I wrote something she couldn't play. For your information, unfortunately, I have no idea where the sheet music is at this point. That class was spring in 09, and I've had a lot of life happen since then. The sheet music is definitely not on my current computer. Honestly, good on her for grading you fairly because I know too many teachers that would screw you and then make up some BS just to be spiteful. That's it for today, fellow humans. Thanks for watching. Dank Doggo appreciates your time. If you enjoy our content and want to see more of us, stay tuned and subscribe. Don't forget to smash that like button and ring the bell, or Doggo will cry. Also, you can always tell us, your friendly neighbor Doggo, your experiences in the comment section. I will catch up with you guys later in the next video.